Mother Bear entered radiology, carrying a baby for X-rays. What happened next was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The automatic glass doors of Pine Valley Medical Center slid open with a soft whisper at 11:47 p.m. Dr. Zara Whitehall had just finished her third cup of coffee when she heard the familiar sound echoing through the empty radiology department. She glanced up from her paperwork, expecting to see another late-night emergency patient being wheeled in by the paramedics. Instead, her breath caught in her throat. A massive brown bear stood in the doorway, her thick fur glistening under the harsh fluorescent lights. But what made Zara's hands tremble wasn't the sight of the bear itself. It was what the bear carried so carefully in her massive paws, a human baby. The infant couldn't have been more than 18 months old, wrapped in what looked like a torn pink blanket. The child's tiny chest rose and fell in shallow, labored breaths. The bear's dark eyes swept across the empty waiting room before settling on Zara, who stood frozen behind the reception desk. "Oh my God," Zara whispered, her voice barely audible in the sterile silence. The bear took a step forward, her massive paws making no sound on the polished linoleum floor. She moved with an impossible gentleness, as if she understood exactly how fragile the bundle in her arms truly was. The baby stirred slightly, letting out a weak whimper that seemed to echo through the entire department. Zara's medical training kicked in, overriding her shock. She could see from where she stood that something was wrong with the child. The baby's skin had a pale, almost grayish tint, and those shallow breaths suggested possible internal injuries. But how could she help when a 700-pound bear stood between her and the patient? The bear's eyes never left Zara's face as she approached the reception desk. Step by careful step, she moved closer until she was standing directly in front of the counter. Then, with movements so gentle they seemed almost human, she placed the baby on the smooth surface. The child's eyes fluttered open for a moment, revealing bright blue irises that seemed far too aware for such a young age. The baby looked directly at Zara and made a soft cooing sound before closing her eyes again. "Where did you find her?" Zara asked softly, knowing the bear couldn't answer but needing to fill the suffocating silence. The bear stepped back slightly but remained close enough to touch the baby. Her massive head tilted to one side and she made a low, rumbling sound deep in her chest. It wasn't threatening. It sounded almost like she was trying to communicate something urgent. Zara's hands shook as she reached for the phone to call for backup, but something in the bear's expression stopped her. The animal's eyes held an intelligence that seemed to say, "Please, help her. I brought her here because I knew you could help." The baby's breathing became more labored, and Zara realized she was running out of time to make a decision. The nearest hospital was 40 miles away, and by the look of the child's condition, they might not have 40 minutes. "I need to examine her," Zara said, speaking to the bear as if she were addressing a concerned parent. "Will you let me?" The bear's response was immediate. She stepped back another foot, giving Zara clear access to the baby while maintaining her protective vigil. It was as if she understood every word. Zara moved slowly around the counter, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure the bear could hear it. As she approached the baby, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. There were small tears in the child's clothing, and what looked like dried blood on the pink blanket. But there was something else, something that didn't make sense. The baby's tiny hand was wrapped around a small piece of fabric that didn't match her blanket. It was blue denim, torn and stained with what looked like mud and something darker. Zara gently pried the fabric from the baby's grip, and her stomach lurched when she saw what was embroidered on it. Daddy's little girl, in faded yellow thread. The bear watched Zara's every movement with intense focus. When Zara looked up, she saw something in the animal's eyes that chilled her to the core. It wasn't just concern for the baby's welfare. It was grief. The bear had lost something too, someone. Zara's mind raced as she began her preliminary examination of the child. The baby's pulse was weak but steady, and her temperature was dangerously low. She needed immediate medical attention, possibly surgery. But as Zara worked, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was missing something crucial about how this baby had ended up in the care of a wild bear. The bear made another soft rumbling sound, and Zara looked up to see the animal's massive head tilted toward the entrance. For a moment, Zara thought she heard something too, a distant sound that might have been a car engine, or it might have been something else entirely. The baby's eyes opened again, and this time they stayed open. She looked directly at the bear and made a soft babbling sound. The bear's expression changed immediately, becoming somehow more tender, more protective. That's when Zara realized the most shocking truth of all. This wasn't a rescue. This was a mother protecting her child. Zara's hands trembled as she processed what her eyes were telling her. The way the bear looked at the baby wasn't the gaze of a wild animal that had found an abandoned human child. It was the look of pure, unconditional love that only a mother could have. But that was impossible. Bears didn't adopt human babies. Bears didn't bring sick children to hospitals for treatment, yet here she was, watching exactly that happen. The baby made another soft sound, and the bear immediately stepped closer to the reception desk. Her massive paw reached out, not to grab or threaten, but to gently stroke the child's forehead with the back of her knuckles. The gesture was so tender, so human-like, that Zara felt tears forming in her eyes. "How is this possible?" she whispered to herself. The bear's ears suddenly perked up, swiveling toward the entrance. Zara heard it too now, the unmistakable sound of multiple vehicles approaching fast. Car doors slamming, voices shouting orders, heavy footsteps running across asphalt. The bear's entire body tensed. She let out a low growl, but her eyes remained fixed on the baby. She was torn between her protective instincts and her need to stay close to the child who clearly needed medical attention. "It's okay," Zara said quickly, though she wasn't sure if she was trying to calm the bear or herself. "They're here to help." But even as she said the words, she wondered if that was true. The approaching voices didn't sound like medical professionals. They sounded like law enforcement. Maybe animal control. People who would see a dangerous wild animal that needed to be removed, not a mother trying to save her child. The automatic doors burst open, and 6 armed officers stormed into the radiology department. Their weapons were drawn, all pointed at the bear. Behind them came Dr. Marcus Chen, the hospital's chief of emergency medicine, along with 2 paramedics pushing a gurney. "Nobody move," shouted the lead officer, a tall man with graying hair and cold blue eyes. "We have the situation contained." The bear's response was immediate and heartbreaking. She positioned herself between the officers and the baby, rising up on her hind legs to her full 9-foot height. But she didn't attack. She didn't even snarl. She simply stood there, making herself a shield between the guns and the child she was protecting. "Wait," Zara called out, stepping between the officers and the bear. "She's not aggressive. She brought the baby here for help." "Step away from the animal, doctor," the lead officer commanded. "This bear is extremely dangerous." "No, you don't understand," Zara insisted. "Look at her, really look at her. She's protecting this baby." Dr. Chen moved closer, his medical bag in hand. He was a man who had seen everything in his 30 years of emergency medicine, but even he seemed stunned by the scene before him. "How long has the bear been here?" "About 10 minutes, Zara replied. She placed the baby on the counter herself. "The child has possible internal injuries and needs immediate attention." The bear lowered herself back to all fours but remained positioned protectively near the baby. Her dark eyes moved from officer to officer, assessing each threat while never losing awareness of the child behind her. "We need to tranquilize it," the lead officer said, reaching for something on his belt. "No!" Zara and Dr. Chen shouted simultaneously. "If you tranquilize her now, she could fall on the baby," Dr. Chen explained quickly. "And look at her behavior. She's not acting like a wild animal. She's acting like a mother," Zara finished. One of the younger officers lowered his weapon slightly. "That's impossible. Bears don't care for human children." But, as if to prove him wrong, the baby began to cry. Not the healthy wail of a normal infant, but a weak, painful whimpering that made everyone in the room wince. The bear's reaction was instant. She turned toward the baby and made a series of soft, chuffing sounds, the same sounds mother bears made to comfort their cubs. And impossibly, the baby began to quiet. Dr. Chen seized the moment. "I need to examine this child immediately. Whatever's happening here, we can sort it out later. Right now, I have a patient who needs help." He approached slowly, speaking in calm, measured tones. "Easy, Mama. I'm going to help your baby. I'm going to make her feel better." The bear watched his every move, but she didn't interfere as Dr. Chen began his examination. What he found made his face pale. "This child has been severely injured," he said quietly. "Multiple contusions, possible internal bleeding, and her body temperature is dangerously low. She needs surgery immediately." "How long has she been like this?" asked Officer Reynolds, the younger officer who had lowered his weapon. Dr. Chen looked up grimly. "Based on her condition, I'd say she's been injured for at least 12 to 15 hours, maybe longer." Zara felt her heart sink. That means someone should have brought her in much sooner," Dr. Chen finished. "If they had waited much longer, she wouldn't have made it." The implications hit everyone in the room at the same time. This bear hadn't just found an abandoned baby. She had found a critically injured child and somehow understood that the child needed medical help that only humans could provide. She had carried the baby for miles through the wilderness to reach the hospital. She had saved the child's life. "We need to get her to surgery now," Dr. Chen announced, carefully lifting the baby from the reception counter. The bear's reaction was immediate and heart-wrenching. She reared up again, not in aggression but in distress. She made a series of plaintive sounds that sounded almost like she was pleading. She doesn't want to be separated from the baby, Zara realized. Officer Reynolds holstered his weapon completely. Maybe she doesn't have to be. The lead officer turned to stare at him. "Are you suggesting we let a wild bear into our operating room?" "I'm suggesting," Reynolds said slowly, "that this bear has done more to help this child than whoever was supposed to be taking care of her in the first place." Dr. Chen was already moving toward the surgical wing with the baby in his arms. The bear followed immediately, staying close enough to keep the child in sight but not interfering with the medical team's movements. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Chen muttered as they walked. "I've never seen anything like this." But Zara was studying the bear's behavior more closely, and something else was bothering her. Something about the way the bear moved, the way she seemed to know exactly where to go in the hospital. It was as if she had been here before. As they reached the surgical prep area, Zara noticed something that made her stop dead in her tracks. On the bear's right front paw, barely visible through her thick fur, was a small scar. It was perfectly straight and precisely located, exactly where a surgical incision would be placed for certain types of operations. "Dr. Chen," Zara called out urgently, "I need to show you something." But before she could point out the scar, the baby opened her eyes and looked directly at the bear. For the first time since arriving at the hospital, the child smiled. It was a weak smile, but it was real. And when the bear saw that smile, she did something that made everyone in the hallway freeze. She smiled back. Not the way humans smile, but the unmistakable expression of joy and relief that crossed her massive features was undeniably, impossibly human. That's when Zara knew they weren't just dealing with a protective bear. They were dealing with something that defied everything they thought they knew about the natural world. Officer Reynolds was the first to speak. "We need to find out where this baby came from, and we need to find out fast." "Why?" asked the lead officer. "Because," Reynolds said, his voice barely above a whisper, "if this bear has been caring for this child for 12 hours, where are the child's real parents?" The question hung in the air like a death sentence, because there was only one reason why a bear would be caring for a human baby while the child's parents were nowhere to be found. And none of them wanted to think about what that reason might be. The silence that followed was broken by the sound of Dr. Chen's pager beeping urgently. He glanced at it, and his face went pale. "We need to move. Now, the baby's vitals are dropping." As the medical team rushed toward the operating room, the bear followed with determined steps. But as they approached the sterile surgical area, Dr. Chen stopped and turned to face the massive animal. "I'm sorry, but you can't come in here," he said gently. "The operating room has to remain sterile." The bear's reaction was immediate and devastating. She let out a sound that was part growl, part whimper, and entirely heartbreaking. She began pacing back and forth in front of the surgical doors, her massive paws clicking against the linoleum floor. "She's going to go into distress," Zara observed. "Look at her behavior. She's exhibiting classic signs of separation anxiety." Officer Reynolds stepped forward. "What if we set up a viewing area?" The pediatric wing has observation windows. She could see the baby without compromising the sterile field. Dr. Chen nodded quickly. "That might work, but we need to move fast." As they redirected toward the pediatric surgical suite, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something crucial. The bear's behavior was becoming more human-like by the minute, and that surgical scar on her paw was bothering her more than she cared to admit. "Officer Reynolds," she said quietly as they walked, "I need you to run a check on missing persons reports from the last 24 hours. Specifically, any families with young children who might have been camping or hiking in the area." "Already on it," Reynolds replied, pulling out his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 7. I need you to check for any missing persons reports involving families with infants, particularly in the Pine Valley Forest area." The response came back almost immediately, and the voice on the radio made everyone stop walking. "Unit 7, we have a report filed 6 hours ago. The Blackwood family, David and Sarah Blackwood with their 18-month-old daughter Emma. They were reported missing by campground management when they failed to return from a day hike. Search and rescue teams have been looking for them since dawn." The bear stopped pacing and turned toward the radio. Her ears perked forward as if she understood every word. "Did you get that description of the missing child?" Reynolds asked into his radio. 18-month-old female. Blonde hair, blue eyes, wearing a pink outfit with white blanket. The parents were last seen wearing matching blue denim shirts with Family Adventure 2024 embroidered on them. Zara felt her stomach drop. She looked at the piece of torn fabric still clutched in her hand, the blue denim with Daddy's little girl embroidered in yellow thread. "Oh, God," she whispered. Dr. Chen had heard it too. "We need to get this child into surgery immediately, and we need to find those parents." But as they finally reached the pediatric surgical suite, something happened that changed everything. The bear walked directly to the observation window and placed both paws against the glass. She stared into the empty operating room for a long moment, then turned to look at each person in the hallway. Her eyes held an intelligence that was undeniably human. Then she did something that made everyone present question everything they thought they knew about reality. She spoke. Not in words, but in a voice that was unmistakably human, unmistakably female, and filled with desperate urgency. "Please," the voice said, though the bear's mouth didn't move. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Please save my baby." Officer Reynolds dropped his radio. Dr. Chen's medical bag fell from his suddenly nerveless fingers. Zara felt her knees buckle, and she had to grab the wall for support. Did everyone else hear that?" Reynolds asked in a voice barely above a whisper. They all nodded, too stunned to speak. The bear was still standing at the window, but now she was looking directly at Zara, and somehow, impossibly, Zara could hear her thoughts as clearly as if she were speaking aloud. "I tried to save them," the voice in Zara's head said. "I tried so hard. But I was too late for David and Sarah. Please don't let me be too late for Emma." You're Sarah Blackwood," Zara said out loud, her voice shaking. The bear's massive head nodded once. "But that's impossible," Reynolds said. "People they don't turn into bears." Dr. Chen had recovered enough to pick up his medical bag, but his hands were still trembling. "We need to get the child into surgery. Whatever's happening here, we can figure it out later. Right now, Emma Blackwood is dying." As the medical team finally entered the operating room with the baby, Zara remained in the hallway with the bear, who claimed to be Sarah Blackwood. The animal's eyes never left the window, watching as the doctors worked to save the child she had carried through miles of wilderness. "How?" Zara asked softly. "How is this possible?" The bear turned to look at her, and again Zara heard the voice in her mind. "The cave," Sarah's voice said. There was something in the cave, something old, something hungry. Images began flooding Zara's mind. Not her own memories, but Sarah's. She saw a family hiking through the forest, laughing and taking pictures. She saw them taking shelter in a cave when a sudden storm hit. She saw strange markings on the cave walls, symbols that seemed to pulse with their own light. And then she saw the thing that lived in the cave. It was ancient beyond measure, a creature of shadow and hunger that fed on human life force. But it was also dying, weakened by centuries of solitude. When the Blackwood family stumbled into its domain, it saw an opportunity. It couldn't take all three of them. It wasn't strong enough, but it could take two, draining their life force to sustain itself. The third would be transformed, changed into something that could survive in the wilderness long enough to carry out one final act of love. Sarah had volunteered herself, begging the creature to spare her husband and daughter. But the creature was cunning. It took David first, then began draining Sarah's life force. As she felt herself changing, transforming into something that was no longer human, she grabbed Emma and ran. The transformation completed itself as she fled through the forest. Her human body became something that could survive in the wilderness, something strong enough to carry a child for miles, something that could protect Emma from the elements and the other dangers of the forest. But she was still Sarah Blackwood, still a mother desperate to save her child. The creature, Zara said aloud. "Is it still in the cave?" The bear nodded. Her eyes filled with an intelligence that was heartbreaking in its humanity. "And your husband?" The bear's massive head dropped, and the sound that came from her was pure grief. It was the sound of a woman who had lost everything except the determination to save her child. Through the observation window, they could see Dr. Chen working frantically over Emma's small form. The child's vitals were displayed on multiple monitors, and the readings weren't good. "She's going into cardiac arrest," Dr. Chen called out to his team. "I need the defibrillator." The bear pressed herself against the window, her breath fogging the glass. The voice in Zara's mind became more urgent. "She's slipping away. I can feel it. The connection between us, it's breaking." "What connection?" Zara asked. "The creature's magic. It's what's kept her alive this long. But as she gets further from me, as the transformation becomes more complete, I'm losing her." Zara's mind raced. "What if we brought you closer? What if we found a way to get you into the operating room?" "It's too late for that," Sarah's voice said sadly. "The only way to save her now is to break the creature's hold completely. But that means what?" The bear turned to look at her with eyes that held both love and terrible resolve. "That means I have to go back to the cave. I have to face the creature that did this to us, and I have to make it undo what it's done." "But you said your husband is already dead." "David is gone," Sarah's voice confirmed. "But Emma still has a chance. The creature's power is tied to its physical form. If I can destroy that form—" "You'll die," Zara realized. "I'm already dead," Sarah replied. "This body, this form, it's not really me. It's just the creature's magic keeping me animated long enough to save my daughter. But if I can break the spell, if I can destroy the creature, Emma will be free." In the operating room, the monitors were screaming alarms. Emma's heart had stopped. "We're losing her," Dr. Chen shouted. The bear made a sound that was pure anguish. Through the glass, they could see the medical team working desperately to restart the child's heart. "I have to go," Sarah's voice said. "I have to go now, while there's still time." But as the bear turned to leave, something extraordinary happened. Officer Reynolds stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "You're not going alone," he said firmly. "This isn't your fight," Sarah's voice said. "Maybe not," Reynolds replied. "But I've got a daughter, too, and if something happened to her, I'd want someone to help me save her." The lead officer, who had been silent throughout the entire supernatural exchange, finally spoke up. "Reynolds, you can't be serious. You're talking about following a bear into a cave to fight some kind of monster." "I'm talking about helping a mother save her child," Reynolds replied. "That's what we're supposed to do, isn't it? Protect and serve?" Dr. Chen's voice came through the intercom from the operating room. "We've got a pulse. It's weak, but she's stabilized for now. But I don't know how long we can keep her like this." The bear looked back at the window one last time, then at Officer Reynolds. "If you're coming with me," Sarah's voice said, "you need to understand something. The creature in that cave isn't just ancient. It's evil in a way that most people can't comprehend. It feeds on fear, on despair, on the love that parents have for their children. And it's been waiting for someone to come back." "Waiting for you?" "No," Sarah's voice said grimly. "Waiting for Emma. She's still connected to it through me. As long as I exist in this form, the creature can use that connection to claim her soul, even if we manage to save her life." The implications hit everyone at once. The bear wasn't just planning to fight the creature. She was planning to sacrifice herself to break the connection completely. "There has to be another way," Zara said desperately. "There is," said a new voice from behind them. They all turned to see Dr. Marcus Chen standing in the doorway, still in his surgical scrubs, but no longer in the operating room. "The surgery is complete," he announced. "Emma is stable, but she's not out of danger yet. And I overheard enough of your conversation to understand what we're dealing with." "You believe all this?" the lead officer asked incredulously. "I've been a doctor for 30 years, Dr. Chen replied. "I've seen things that can't be explained by medical science. And right now, I have a patient whose life depends on us accepting that sometimes the impossible is just another word for something we don't understand yet." He turned to face the bear directly. "Sarah, I need you to listen to me very carefully. There might be a way to save both you and Emma, but it's going to require you to trust me completely." The bear tilted her massive head, waiting. "The connection between you and the creature runs both ways, doesn't it? It's using you to anchor itself to this world, but it's also vulnerable through that connection." Sarah's voice in their minds was cautious. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that we don't go to the cave to fight the creature. We bring the creature to us." The hallway fell silent except for the distant sounds of hospital equipment and the bear's heavy breathing. "That's insane," Reynolds said. "Maybe," Dr. Chen admitted. "But it's also the only way to save both mother and child. The creature needs to maintain its connection to Sarah to survive in our world. If we can force it to manifest here in the hospital, we can fight it on our terms. And how exactly do we force an ancient evil creature to come to us?" Zara asked. Dr. Chen smiled grimly. "We give it something it wants more than survival itself." He gestured toward the observation window, where Emma lay sleeping under the warm glow of the surgical lights. "We use Emma as bait." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Even the bear seemed to recoil from the suggestion, taking a step backward and letting out a low, threatening growl. "Absolutely not!" Sarah's voice exploded in their minds, filled with rage and maternal fury. "I will not use my daughter as bait for that monster." "Listen to me," Dr. Chen said urgently, raising his hands in a peaceful gesture. "I'm not suggesting we put Emma in danger, but the creature is already connected to her through you. Right now, it's probably growing stronger by feeding off that connection. If we don't act soon, it won't matter if we save her life medically. The creature will claim her soul anyway." Officer Reynolds was pacing now, his hand unconsciously resting on his service weapon. "Explain your plan, Doc, and it better be good because right now it sounds like you're asking us to sacrifice a baby to fight a demon." "Not sacrifice," Dr. Chen corrected. "We use Emma's presence to force the creature to manifest physically, but we do it in a controlled environment, surrounded by everything we need to protect her and destroy it." Zara felt her medical training warring with the supernatural reality they were facing. "What kind of controlled environment? This is a hospital, not a fortress." "Actually," Dr. Chen said with a grim smile, "a hospital is exactly what we need. Think about it. We have equipment that can monitor life signs, detect changes in electromagnetic fields, even measure brain activity. If this creature is what I think it is, we can track it, predict its movements, maybe even find its weaknesses." The bear had stopped growling, but her massive form remained tense. Through their mental connection, Sarah's voice was cautious but interested. "You've dealt with something like this before." It wasn't a question. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. 15 years ago, in Tibet, I was part of a medical mission to a remote monastery. The monks there were dealing with something they called a hunger spirit, ancient, malevolent, feeding off human life force. We managed to destroy it, but not before I learned how these entities operate. "How?" Reynolds asked. "They exist partially in our world and partially in what the monks called the shadow realm. To fully manifest in our reality, they need an anchor point, usually a person they've marked or transformed. Once they're fully here, they become vulnerable to physical destruction. Zara was beginning to understand. So, Sarah is the anchor point. If the creature wants to claim Emma, it has to manifest physically to break the connection. Exactly. And once it's physical, we can kill it. The lead officer, who had been listening with growing skepticism, finally spoke up. This is insane. We're talking about deliberately summoning a demon into a hospital full of innocent people. No, Dr. Chen replied firmly. We're talking about saving a child's life and her mother's soul. And we're going to do it in the most isolated, secure part of the hospital, the old psychiatric wing. Zara felt a chill run down her spine. The old psychiatric wing had been abandoned for over a decade after budget cuts forced the hospital to relocate mental health services. The entire floor was empty, sealed off from the rest of the building. That wing is condemned, she said. It's not safe. It's perfect, Doctor, Chen countered. Isolated from the rest of the hospital, easy to evacuate the surrounding areas, and it has the old electroshock therapy equipment. If I'm right about the creature's nature, high-voltage electricity might be exactly what we need to disrupt its physical form. Sarah's voice in their minds was thoughtful now. The creature in the cave was afraid of metal. David had a steel hiking knife, and when he tried to fight it, the creature recoiled from the blade. Iron and steel have been used to ward off supernatural entities for thousands of years, Dr. Chen confirmed. But we need more than just knives. We need a way to trap it, weaken it, and destroy it permanently. Officer Reynolds was already on his radio. Dispatch, I need you to contact the fire department and emergency services. We're going to need the entire 7th floor of Pine Valley Medical evacuated, and I want a perimeter set up around the building. What's your reason for the evacuation? Came the response. Reynolds looked around at the group. A doctor, a radiologist, a skeptical lead officer, and a bear who was actually a transformed mother trying to save her child. Gas leak, he said simply. Potential explosion hazard. As Reynolds coordinated the evacuation, Dr. Chen turned back to Sarah. I need to ask you something important. When the creature transformed you, did it feel like it was taking something from you, some essential part of who you are? The bear's massive head nodded slowly. That's your soul, Dr. Chen explained. The creature has part of your essence and part of Emma's through the connection. When it manifests to claim her completely, it will have to bring those soul fragments with it. That's when we strike. What if you're wrong? Zara asked. What if the creature doesn't come? Oh, it will come, Sarah's voice said with grim certainty. I can feel it stirring already. It knows we're planning something. It's angry. As if to confirm her words, the lights in the hallway began to flicker. The temperature dropped noticeably and everyone could see their breath forming small clouds in the suddenly frigid air. It's starting, Doctor, Chen said urgently. We need to move Emma to the old wing now before the creature realizes what we're doing. But as they turned toward the pediatric ward, they found their path blocked by something that made everyone freeze. Standing in the middle of the hallway was a man in torn, bloody hiking clothes. His face was pale and slack, his eyes completely black. When he spoke, his voice carried an echo that seemed to come from very far away. You will not take what is mine, the figure said. It was David Blackwood, or what was left of him. The bear let out a sound that was pure anguish, recognizing her transformed husband. But this wasn't the man she had loved. This was something else wearing his face, speaking with his voice. The creature is using him as a puppet, Dr. Chen said quietly. It's trying to stop us before we can reach the old wing." The David thing smiled, and when it did, they could see that its teeth had been replaced by jagged pieces of stone and metal. "My wife thinks she can save our daughter," it said in David's voice, but with an intonation that was utterly alien. "But she doesn't understand the bargain she made. Emma belongs to me now. They both do." Officer Reynolds had his weapon drawn, but he hesitated to shoot what appeared to be a human being, even one that was clearly no longer alive. "That's not your husband anymore," Dr. Chen said to Sarah. "The creature is animating his body, using your emotional connection to him to manipulate you." The bear took a step toward the David thing, and everyone could feel the anguish radiating from her. Through their mental connection, Sarah's voice was breaking. "I know it's not him, but seeing his face, hearing his voice—" "Focus on Emma," Zara said urgently. "Focus on saving your daughter." The David thing laughed, and the sound was like breaking glass mixed with screaming wind. "You cannot save her by fighting me," it said. "I am eternal. I have consumed thousands of souls over the millennia. What are 3 humans and a transformed beast against my power?" "We're about to find out," Reynolds said, and fired 3 shots directly into the creature's chest. The bullets passed through the David thing as if it were made of smoke. It continued to smile its horrible stone-toothed smile. "Physical weapons cannot harm me in this form," it said. "But I can harm you." It raised David's hand, and invisible force slammed into Officer Reynolds, sending him flying backward into the wall. He hit with a sickening crunch and slumped to the floor, unconscious. "Reynolds!" Zara cried out, starting toward him. "Don't," Dr. Chen warned. "If you get too close, it can drain your life force, too." The creature turned its black eyes toward the bear. "Come to me, Sarah. Accept your fate, and I will make your daughter's transformation quick and painless. She will make a beautiful addition to my collection." But instead of approaching, the bear did something unexpected. She reared up on her hind legs and let out a roar that shook the entire building. It wasn't just the sound of an angry animal. It was the sound of a mother's fury, amplified by supernatural power. The David thing actually took a step backward. "You think your anger gives you strength?" it sneered. But there was uncertainty in its voice now. "Your emotions make you weak. They always have." "No," Sarah's voice said, and now everyone in the hallway could hear her speaking aloud, not just in their minds. "My love for my family is what makes me strong." The bear began to change. Not back into human form, but into something else entirely. Her fur began to glow with a soft golden light, and her eyes blazed with an inner fire that pushed back the supernatural cold. "Impossible," the David thing whispered. "You made a mistake," Sarah said, her voice coming from the glowing bear, but somehow sounding completely human. "You thought you could use my love for my family to control me. But love isn't a weakness. It's the strongest force in the universe." The creature tried to maintain its hold on David's form, but the body was beginning to decay rapidly, unable to contain the creature's essence in the face of Sarah's transformed state. "This changes nothing," it snarled as David's body crumbled to dust. "I will simply manifest in my true form and take what I want." "Good," Dr. Chen said grimly. "That's exactly what we're counting on." But as the last traces of David's body dissolved, the creature's voice echoed through the hospital with a sound like thunder. "You want to see my true form? Very well. But know that when you do, everyone in this building will die. I will feed on every soul here, starting with your precious Emma." The lights went out completely, plunging the hallway into absolute darkness. When the emergency lighting flickered on a few seconds later, the David thing was gone. but they could hear something moving in the walls, something large and hungry, making its way toward the pediatric ward where Emma lay sleeping. "It's heading for the baby," Zara said urgently. "No," Sarah corrected, her glowing form providing the only real light in the darkened hallway. "It's heading for the old psychiatric wing. It knows that's where we want to make our stand, so it's going there first. It wants to corrupt that space, make it its own domain before we can use it against it." Dr. Chen was already moving, helping Officer Reynolds to his feet. The young officer was conscious but groggy, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. "Can you walk?" Dr. Chen asked. "Yeah," Reynolds mumbled. "But next time someone suggests using a baby as bait to fight a demon, I'm putting in for a transfer." Despite everything, Zara found herself almost smiling. "We need to get Emma and get to the old wing before the creature fully manifests there." "Already ahead of you," said a new voice. They turned to see a woman in surgical scrubs wheeling Emma's incubator down the hallway. But this wasn't one of the hospital's staff. This woman was tall and elegant, with silver hair and eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. "Who are you?" Dr. Chen demanded. "Someone who's been hunting this particular creature for a very long time," the woman replied. "My name is Elena Vasquez, and I'm here to help you kill it." Sarah's glowing bear form moved closer to the incubator, checking on Emma. The baby was awake and alert, seemingly unaffected by the supernatural chaos around her. "How did you know to come here?" Zara asked Elena. "I've been tracking this creature for 15 years, Elena replied. "Ever since it killed my husband and son in a cave in Romania. I know its patterns, its weaknesses, and most importantly, I know how to destroy it permanently." "Why should we trust you?" Reynolds asked, still shaky from his encounter with the David thing. Elena smiled grimly and pulled back her sleeve, revealing an intricate tattoo that seemed to move and shift in the emergency lighting. "Because I bear the mark of the hunt. I'm one of the last guardian hunters, trained to track and eliminate entities like this one." The tattoo on her arm suddenly flared with the same golden light that surrounded Sarah's bear form. "The creature made a critical error when it transformed you, Sarah," Elena continued. "It tried to use your maternal love as an anchor, but instead it gave you power. Power that can destroy it." "What kind of power?" Sarah asked. "The power of pure, selfless love," Elena explained. "It's the one force that creatures like this cannot understand or defend against. But using it will require a sacrifice." "What kind of sacrifice?" Dr. Chen asked, though his expression suggested he already suspected the answer. To destroy the creature permanently, Sarah will have to channel all of her love for her family through the connection it created. The resulting energy burst will obliterate the creature, but it will also kill me, Sarah finished. "I figured as much." "There has to be another way," Zara protested. "There is," Elena said quietly, "but it's even more dangerous." She looked at each of them in turn, her ancient eyes holding depths of knowledge and pain. "We can try to sever the connection between Sarah and the creature while keeping them both alive. But to do that, we need someone willing to take Sarah's place as the anchor point. Someone willing to bind themselves to the creature temporarily while we destroy its physical form." The implications hit them all at once. "You're talking about a human sacrifice," Reynolds said. "Not a sacrifice," Elena corrected. "A substitution. If we can transfer the connection to someone else, Sarah and Emma will be free. But whoever takes on that connection will die when the creature dies," Dr. Chen finished. They all stood in silence for a moment, processing the terrible choice they faced. Save Sarah and Emma by letting someone else die, or let Sarah sacrifice herself to destroy the creature. That's when they heard it. a sound coming from the direction of the old psychiatric wing. Not quite human, not quite animal, but filled with an ancient hunger that made their souls recoil in terror. The creature was manifesting, and it was calling Emma's name. The sound echoed through the hospital corridors like a diseased lullaby, distorting through the ventilation system and seeming to come from everywhere at once. "Emma, Emma, come to me, little one." The baby in the incubator stirred at the sound, her tiny hands reaching upward as if responding to a familiar voice. Sarah's glowing bare form immediately positioned herself between the incubator and the direction of the voice, her maternal instincts overriding everything else. "It's trying to call her to it," Elena said urgently. "The creature is using its connection to Emma to compel her. If she gets close enough to its physical form, it can complete the bonding process." Dr. Chen was checking Emma's vital signs on the portable monitors attached to her incubator. "Her brain wave patterns are spiking. It's like something is trying to override her natural responses." "We need to move," Reynolds said, though he was still unsteady on his feet. "Every second we stay here, that thing gets stronger." But as they started toward the old psychiatric wing, the hospital's PA system crackled to life. Instead of the usual hospital announcements, they heard something that made their blood run cold. "Attention, Pine Valley Medical Center," came a voice that was clearly not human, though it was trying to mimic a hospital administrator's tone. "We are experiencing a minor supernatural infestation on the 7th floor. All patients and staff should remain calm while we on-feed on your life essence." The voice began to laugh, and the sound was like breaking glass mixed with screaming children. "That's impossible," Zara said. "The PA system doesn't work on the abandoned floors." "It does now," Elena replied grimly. "The creature is expanding its influence. It's not just manifesting physically, it's taking control of the hospital's infrastructure." As if to prove her point, the elevator at the end of the hallway dinged softly and the doors slid open. But instead of an empty elevator car, they could see what looked like a swirling vortex of darkness that seemed to pulse with its own malevolent heartbeat. "Don't look directly at it," Elena warned. "That's a portal to the shadow realm. If you stare too long, it can pull your soul right out of your body." Officer Reynolds instinctively moved to shield his eyes, but not before he caught a glimpse of something moving within the darkness. "There's something in there," he said. "Something big." "The creature's true form," Elena confirmed. "It's using the elevator shaft as a conduit between our world and its domain. We need to get to the psychiatric wing before it fully crosses over." They moved as quickly as they could manage while transporting Emma's incubator, but the hospital seemed to be working against them. Doors that should have opened remained sealed. Hallways that should have led to stairwells instead curved back on themselves in impossible architectural loops. "The creature is manipulating the building's layout," Dr. Chen observed. "It's trying to trap us." "No," Sarah's voice said, her golden glow pulsing brighter. "It's hurting us. It wants us to go to the psychiatric wing, but on its terms, not ours." Elena nodded. "It's setting up the confrontation site to give itself every possible advantage. By the time we get there, the entire floor will be under its control. Then we don't play by its rules," Zara said suddenly. "What if we don't go to the psychiatric wing at all?" Everyone stopped moving and looked at her. "Explain," Elena said. "The creature wants us to fight it in its chosen battleground," Zara continued. "But what if we force it to come to us instead? What if we make our stand somewhere it can't control?" "Where?" Reynolds asked. "It's already taking over the whole building." Zara smiled grimly. "The radiology department. My department. I know every inch of it, and more importantly, I know how to weaponize the equipment." Dr. Chen's eyes widened as he understood. The X-ray machines, the radiation shielding, the electromagnetic fields. Exactly. If this creature is some kind of energy being, then controlled bursts of radiation might be able to disrupt its physical form, and the lead-lined walls of the imaging rooms would contain any supernatural effects, preventing it from spreading its influence. Elena was nodding slowly. It's risky, but it might work. The creature wouldn't expect us to make our stand in a place designed to contain dangerous energy. But as they changed direction toward the radiology department, the hospital's lights began to flicker in a pattern that seemed almost like Morse code. And through the PA system, the creature's voice came again, but this time it sounded genuinely annoyed. "Clever little humans," it said. "But you cannot escape what has already been set in motion. The child belongs to me, and through her I will have access to every soul in this pathetic little town." "What does it mean?" Reynolds asked. Elena's face had gone pale. "Emma isn't just connected to the creature through Sarah. She's connected to everyone Sarah has ever loved. Her family, her friends, her community. If the creature completes the bonding with Emma, it can use those emotional connections to spread its influence exponentially. Like a supernatural virus," Dr. Chen said with growing horror. "Exactly. Every person Emma has a connection to becomes a potential host, and through them, everyone they love becomes vulnerable. Within days, the creature could control thousands of people." Sarah's bear form let out a roar of rage and despair. "I brought this monster to my daughter. I led it right to her." "No," Zara said firmly. "You saved her. Without your intervention, she would have died in that cave, and the creature would have claimed her soul anyway. At least this way, she has a chance." They had reached the radiology department, and Zara immediately began powering up the X-ray equipment. But as the machines hummed to life, something unexpected happened. Emma began to glow. Not with the same golden light that surrounded Sarah, but with a pure white radiance that seemed to push back the supernatural darkness that was creeping through the hospital. "That's impossible," Elena breathed. "Children that young don't have enough spiritual development to manifest protective energy. Unless," Dr. Chen said slowly, "the creature's connection to her is working both ways. What if Emma is unconsciously drawing power from the creature itself? The implications hit them all at once. If Emma could tap into the creature's power through their connection, she might be able to turn that power against it." But before anyone could process this development further, the radiology department's main door slammed shut with a metallic clang that reverberated through the building. The electronic locks engaged with a series of sharp clicks. "We're trapped," Reynolds said, trying the manual release. The door wouldn't budge. "No," Elena corrected. "We're exactly where we need to be." The temperature in the room began to drop rapidly. Their breath became visible, and frost started forming on the metal surfaces of the X-ray equipment. But Emma's white glow grew brighter, creating a warm bubble of energy around her incubator. Then they heard footsteps in the hallway outside. Not the normal sound of someone walking, but the deliberate measured pace of something large and heavy. Each footstep was accompanied by a sound like claws scraping against stone. "It's here," Sarah said. The footsteps stopped directly outside the door. For a long moment, there was absolute silence. Then the door began to change. The metal started to ripple and flow like water, transforming from solid steel into something organic and alive. What had been a door became a membrane of pulsing flesh, and through its translucent surface they could see the outline of something enormous pressing against it from the OT. "The creature is trying to physically reshape the building to suit its needs," Elena explained. But the radiation shielding in these walls is interfering with its power. As if hearing her words, the thing on the other side of the membrane door let out a sound of frustration that was felt more than heard. The building shook, and several pieces of medical equipment fell from their shelves. But Emma's glow continued to intensify, and now they could see that the white light was forming patterns around her, complex geometric shapes that seemed to pulse with mathematical precision. "Those are binding sigils," Elena said with amazement. "The child is unconsciously creating supernatural restraints." "Restraints for what?" Zara asked. Their answer came when the membrane door suddenly burst inward, and the creature's true form filled the doorway. It was nothing like the shadow thing they had glimpsed in the elevator. This was something that had never been human, never been anything from their world. It stood 12 feet tall, with skin that looked like black stone shot through with veins of molten silver. Its limbs were too long, jointed in places that defied anatomy, and its face was a constantly shifting mass of features, sometimes almost human, sometimes purely alien, sometimes just a void where a face should be. But the most terrifying thing about it was its eyes. They weren't black like they had been when it was possessing David's body. They were mirrors, reflecting not the room around them, but the deepest fears and regrets of everyone who looked into them. In those mirror eyes, Zara saw herself failing to save a patient during her residency. Reynolds saw his ex-wife taking their daughter away because of his drinking problem. Dr. Chen saw the monastery in Tibet burning while he ran away instead of helping. And Sarah saw the moment in the cave when she had chosen to let the creature take David instead of finding another way to save them all. "Your guilt feeds me," the creature said, its voice now coming from everywhere and nowhere. "Your love, your fear, your regret, all of it makes me stronger." But as it spoke, Emma's binding sigils flared brighter, and the creature's form wavered slightly. "Impossible," it snarled, turning its mirror eyes toward the baby. "You are mine, child. I have marked you, claimed you, bound you to my essence." Emma looked directly at the creature and smiled. Then she spoke. Not in baby sounds or gibberish, but in clear, perfectly articulated words that no 18-month-old should have been capable of pronouncing. "You're not as strong as you think you are," Emma said in a voice that carried the wisdom of someone far older. "And you made a mistake when you touched my mommy." The creature recoiled as if it had been struck. "What are you?" "I'm exactly what you tried to create," Emma replied. "A bridge between your world and ours, but you forgot something important." She raised her tiny hand, and the white light around her began to coalesce into something solid, a staff of pure energy that hummed with power. "Bridges work both ways," Emma said. "And now I'm going to use your own connection to destroy you." The creature let out a howl of rage and lunged toward the incubator, but Emma's binding sigils formed a barrier of light that stopped it cold. "Elena," Emma said, turning toward the guardian hunter, "you've been carrying something that belongs to me." Elena's hand went unconsciously to a pendant around her neck, a small crystal that had been glowing faintly since she entered the hospital. "That crystal contains the soul fragment of your husband and son," Emma explained gently. "The creature has been using it to control you, to make you hunted across the world, always one step behind. But it's also been feeding you information, hasn't it? Telling you exactly how to find it." Elena's face went white as the implications hit her. "I've been working for it. All these years I thought I was hunting it, but I was actually helping it find new victims." "The creature has been using you to identify other families with strong emotional bonds," Emma continued. "Families like mine, but now we're going to turn that connection against it." She gestured toward Elena's pendant. Break the crystal. Release the souls it contains. They're the key to destroying this thing permanently. But as Elena reached for the pendant, the creature made one final, desperate gambit. "If you destroy me," it said, "the child dies with me. She is too deeply connected to my essence. Breaking that connection will tear her soul apart." Sarah's bear form moved closer to Emma's incubator, her golden glow mixing with the baby's white light. "Then we don't break the connection," Sarah said. "We redirect it." She placed her massive paw on the incubator's surface, and suddenly the three of them, Sarah, Emma, and the creature, were linked by visible streams of energy. "I'm taking Emma's place," Sarah explained. "The creature can have my soul instead of hers." "No," Emma said, her voice filled with a child's panic. "Mommy, no." But Sarah was already transferring the connection, using her love for her daughter to shield Emma from the creature's influence. "This is my choice," Sarah said, as her bear form began to fade, her energy flowing into the link with the creature. A mother's choice. The creature was fighting the transfer, but it was too late. The connection was changing, with Sarah's soul replacing Emma's as the primary anchor point. "Elena, now!" Dr. Chen shouted. Elena didn't hesitate. She grabbed the crystal pendant and smashed it against the X-ray machine's metal housing. The sound that followed wasn't just heard, it was felt in their bones, their souls, their very essence. The crystal shattered into 1,000 points of light, and from each fragment emerged the ghostly image of a soul that had been trapped within. Elena's husband and son appeared first, their forms translucent but recognizable. Then came dozens of others, all the souls the creature had consumed over the centuries. And they were angry. The released souls surrounded the creature like a storm of righteous fury. But instead of attacking it directly, they began to sing. It was the most beautiful and terrible sound any of them had ever heard. A chorus of voices lifted in perfect harmony, singing words in languages that predated human civilization. The song was one of binding, of justice, of final rest. The creature tried to resist, but it was overwhelmed. One by one, the souls it had consumed were reclaiming their power, using it to weave a prison around their tormentor. "The song of endings," Elena whispered, tears streaming down her face as she saw her family one last time. They're singing it back to where it came from. The creature's form began to unravel, its carefully maintained shape dissolving into component shadows and malevolent energy. But as it weakened, Sarah's connection to it was draining her life force at an accelerating rate. "Sarah, you have to let go," Zara called out urgently. "The connection is killing you." "I can't," Sarah replied, her voice growing weaker. "If I let go before the creature is completely destroyed, it could still claim Emma." "Then we'll have to cut the connection ourselves," Dr. Chen said, moving toward the X-ray controls. "Wait," Emma said, her childlike voice suddenly filled with determination. "There's another way." She reached out with her tiny hand toward Sarah's fading bear form. When they touched, something miraculous happened. Instead of draining Sarah's energy, Emma began to share her own power. The white light that surrounded the baby flowed into Sarah, not to replace her maternal love, but to amplify it. "Love shared is love multiplied," Emma said, and suddenly she sounded like the 18-month-old child she was supposed to be. "Daddy taught me that." The combined power of mother and daughter created a feedback loop in the creature's connection. Instead of draining them, the link began to overload with positive energy: love, hope, protection, sacrifice. These were emotions the creature had never truly understood, had only seen as sources of power to be consumed. But now they were flowing through its essence in their pure form, and they were toxic to its very nature. The creature let out one final scream of rage and despair as the soul's song reached its crescendo. The sound shattered every piece of glass in the radiology department, but the binding sigils Emma had created held firm, containing the destruction within the room. Then, in an instant that felt like eternity, the creature simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not banished, but completely unmade, as if it had never been. The released souls faded away one by one, finally able to find their rest. Elena's husband paused long enough to smile at her before disappearing into whatever came after life. The supernatural cold lifted, the lights stopped flickering, and the hospital's PA system returned to its normal announcements about visiting hours and parking regulations. In the sudden stillness that followed, Sarah's bare form began to shift and change. But instead of returning to her human shape, she seemed to exist in a state between forms, sometimes appearing as a woman, sometimes as a bear, sometimes as something that was both and neither. "The transformation isn't completely reversible," she said, her voice carrying notes of both human speech and animal communication. "The creature's magic changed me permanently, but I'm still me. I'm still Emma's mother." Emma had returned to being a normal 18-month-old baby, sleeping peacefully in her incubator. The only sign that anything supernatural had occurred was a small birthmark on her forehead that glowed faintly in dim light, a reminder of the power she had briefly wielded. Dr. Chen was checking Emma's vital signs when he noticed something remarkable. "Her injuries are completely healed. Not just the internal damage from the cave incident, but everything. It's like she was never hurt at all." The creature's destruction released all the life energy it had stolen, Elena explained. Emma received back not just her own vitality, but healing power from all the souls that were freed. Officer Reynolds, who had been remarkably quiet during the final confrontation, finally spoke up. "So, what happens now? How do we explain any of this in our reports?" Elena smiled for the first time since they had met her. "You don't. As far as anyone knows, there was a gas leak that caused hallucinations. The Blackwood family was found by search and rescue teams. The mother suffered some kind of psychological break that caused her to believe she had been transformed, and the baby made a miraculous recovery from her injuries." "And the truth?" Zara asked. "The truth is that a mother's love saved her child and destroyed an ancient evil," Elena replied. "Some truths are too important to be diminished by official reports." As dawn broke over Pine Valley Medical Center, the hospital began to return to normal operations. The evacuated floors were declared safe, the gas leak emergency was officially resolved, and life resumed its ordinary patterns. But in the radiology department, Sarah sat beside Emma's incubator in her shifting, transformed state, humming a lullaby that sounded like it came from both human throat and animal heart. She was changed forever, caught between two worlds, but she was alive. And more importantly, her daughter was safe. "Will you be able to have a normal life?" Zara asked quietly. Sarah looked up with eyes that held depths of both human intelligence and wild wisdom. "Normal is overrated," she said with a smile that was purely, beautifully human. "I have my daughter, and she has her mother. Nothing else matters." Emma stirred in her sleep and reached out with one tiny hand. Sarah placed her finger in the baby's grasp, and for a moment the air around them shimmered with golden light. "Besides," Sarah added, "I think Emma and I are going to have some very interesting adventures together." Outside the hospital windows, the sun continued to rise over a world that had come very close to falling under the dominion of an ancient evil. Most people would never know how close they had come to becoming puppets in a creature's supernatural web. But in one small room, a mother held her daughter's hand, and planned for a future that would be anything but ordinary. And sometimes that's exactly how the world gets saved, one act of love at a time. Elena Vasquez slipped away as quietly as she had arrived, her pendant now just a simple piece of jewelry with no supernatural power. She had other creatures to hunt, other families to protect, but for the first time in 15 years she wasn't driven by revenge or manipulated by forces beyond her control. She was simply a guardian hunter, doing what guardian hunters were meant to do, protecting the innocent from the darkness that lurked at the edges of reality. As she walked into the morning sunlight, she could hear the faint sound of a mother bear humming a lullaby to her human cub. It was the most beautiful sound she had ever heard. 6 months later, Dr. Zara Whitehall was working her usual night shift in the radiology department when she heard a familiar sound at the entrance. The automatic doors whispered open, and she looked up from her paperwork with a smile. Sarah Blackwood walked in, carrying 18-month-old Emma in her arms. To anyone else, Sarah appeared completely human, a young mother with kind eyes and gentle hands. But Zara could see the subtle signs of her dual nature, the way she moved with perfect balance, the protective alertness in her posture, and the faint golden shimmer that surrounded her when she was particularly happy. "How's our favorite patient?" Zara asked, reaching out to tickle Emma under the chin. Emma giggled and clapped her hands, the small birthmark on her forehead glowing softly for just a moment. She was developing normally in every way, walking, babbling, getting into everything with the boundless curiosity of a toddler. The only reminder of her supernatural encounter was that she never cried when separated from her mother, as if some part of her understood that their connection was unbreakable. "She's perfect," Sarah said, and her voice carried the deep contentment of a mother whose child is truly safe. "We just wanted to stop by and thank you again." "For what?" "For believing," Sarah said simply. "For seeing a mother protecting her child instead of just a dangerous animal." Zara felt tears prick her eyes. "You saved her, Sarah. You saved everyone." "We all saved each other," Sarah corrected. "That's what people do when they choose love over fear." As they prepared to leave, Emma reached out toward Zara with her tiny hands. When Zara leaned closer, the baby whispered something that only she could hear. "Thank you for helping my mommy." The words were clear, perfect, and spoken with the gratitude of an old soul in a young body. Then Emma giggled and went back to babbling like any normal toddler. Sarah and Emma walked out into the night, heading home to their small cabin at the edge of Pine Valley Forest. It wasn't the life Sarah had planned before that terrible day in the cave, but it was a good life. A life filled with love, wonder, and the kind of magic that came from choosing hope over despair. As Zara watched them go, she realized something profound. Sometimes the most extraordinary love stories don't end with everything returning to normal. Sometimes they end with people choosing to create a new kind of normal, one where love is stronger than fear, where sacrifice leads to redemption, and where a mother's devotion can literally move mountains. In the quiet of the radiology department, Zara could have sworn she heard the echo of a lullaby being hummed somewhere in the distance, a song that spoke of protection, devotion, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child. It was the sound of love triumphant. It was the sound of hope incarnate. It was the most beautiful sound in the world.